I have to say, I am pretty much a make-it-up-as-you-go-along kind of person, which is why I think I've chosen the title of Chief Officer of Play, because it lets me get away with quite a lot of things, really. So, Imran. This slide here is a bit of a story of what's happened in the last year or so. We start with my little boy, Danny, who's in a cardboard box playing with a ball, to the middle image, which is of a recent thing you may or may not have heard about and might even have pledged some money towards, which was when we tried to crowdfund a 1950s, very kitsch, 9-foot-tall robot, which had apparently spent some time in Leeds in the 1960s, and it was up for auction at Christie's. So a little bit of that tale is just about to unfold. And this picture you see on not yet. That picture you saw at the end was a bit about an aspiration of what might happen in Leeds. So, starting with a question. If any of you follow me through the Culture Vulture website, I am endlessly asking questions. And I might just sort of say that actually if I hadn't been invited to talk today about cities and your relationship with cities and playing in your cities, I might have just, I would have had a hissy fit, quite frankly, because I absolutely love exploring what makes Leeds Leeds and what makes people enjoy where they live. And that's what my passion is, really, is understanding what it takes to create a community of people who give a shit, basically. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that on TEDx, but that's kind of the endless question. So back in January 2012, I had the audacity, well, actually going back a month or two, we had a new chief executive into Leeds City Council called Tom Reardon. And unfortunately for him, he was on Twitter, which is where I spend all my time. And I think one day I just said, why can't we do something really exciting on Millennium Square? It's crap. And he said, why don't you come and meet me for a coffee? And that's what happened. So something that might seem quite subversive has been met so far with lots of positive energy, really. So starting with a question, we did an event in January 2012, which was saying, what would you like? I've got children, I love Leeds, I think there's amazing cultural venues, but actually I want to participate myself more in Leeds. I want to play with the city. So I think we can move on to the next slide, Imran. So this is what happened. People came thinking they were going to have a conversation. And again, as you've already probably witnessed, I roped everybody into making dens. Again, cardboard does play quite a big part in this because it's quite a leveller, it's cheap, we can get hold of it really easily. You can do quite a lot with it. So the point of the day really was saying, what would you want to see in Leeds if you had a choice? And really then, why don't you do it? So from this, I don't know if you can see in this image, I got this sense since I've been looking at these slides that actually having a relationship with a city is about getting down on your hands and knees, not looking at it in a petri dish and really getting stuck in. So the next slide that you're about to see, I'm particularly proud of actually this last one here. The guy who's wearing a pinstripe suit who turned up at the event is head of Parks and Countryside. Some of you might know him if you work in the council. He told me he'd be there for 20 minutes and he was going to walk out of there if it was crap. And he was there till the very end, and he was the most competitive den builder I've ever come across. So the day really was just about saying what happens if we learn through play. So moving on to the next slide. What I found is that I don't think I'm subversive. I think sometimes people think I am, but I like to say what exists out there that I can play with. So what is the narrative? If there's no narrative, it's quite hard to have something to scratch against. So child-friendly Leeds was something that the council were developing as a way of saying this is a really important priority for us. And with me having 2 children under the age of 5, I was saying, well, I agree with that, but I don't see any of these principles currently as a way I live and experience the city. So I started asking questions, was I alone in that? And they were very keen to make good these policies and strategies and say, come on then, let's get on and do it. So I always like those kind of challenges. So this is kind of where this story starts. The next slide. This is my little boy. He's Danny. He's a superhero. And this is a little kind of parable about play, really, which is we said, let's put our feet up and watch the telly, and we let the kids do the washing up for us. They were having a hoot, so we felt fantastic. We can actually enjoy a bit of leisure time. Then my daughter came in dripping wet and said, Mum, come and see the egg soup we've created. Egg soup? They'd cracked 10 eggs across the floor. Okay, so the analogy with this is, did I get cross? No, I thought, actually, that's hilarious. And that'll be a memory for them. They'll remember this more than they'll ever remember some of the stuff I've organised. And I think this is the thing, is about us doing stuff which we're not allowed to. There was no harm done. And it's not seeking permission, it's just seeking some kind of forgiveness if you get it slightly wrong. So the next slide really takes this to a city level, where we did an event which was called Urban Mischief. And we invited an amazing urbanist who sort of showed us how we could play for our own city with not much money and look at public and private spaces and do things on a very small budget, as long as we're responsible to kind of look at what existed and make people smile. So I would put a link to the video, which any of you can see, but it's a 5-minute video of what happens when about 50 people reclaim a small part of Leeds. We had great support from Network Rail and Land Securities for that event. So part of this was around saying we really want to start playing with people who own property in the city, but we know we've got to be kind of responsible before they're going to let us have the keys to the city. So next slide is a question, which is, who does this city belong to? I think it belongs to me, but I kind of also think it equally should belong to anybody who wants to have a place in this city. So you know, whether I go about doing my stuff, I want to actually role model, if I'm honest, that if you have an idea, you've got imagination, you've got a bit of common sense and you're resourceful, you can have a creative input in where you live. And that's what I will go around extolling until I probably finish breathing. The next slide. I don't know if any of you really know Leeds very well, but this was one of my favourite shops ever. It's called Borders, and it's on Briggate, and it's between McDonald's at one end and not far away from the Victoria Quarter. So you get quite an interesting footfall there. It had been empty for about 3 years, and it felt like such a shame because when it came to Leeds, it's one of those places you could hang out, have a great time, and you could not have to spend money. It was an experience in the city centre, which ironically wasn't about spending money, and that's not why they went out of business, by the way. They went out of business for another reason, but that shop was empty, and it's quite symbolic. One end of the street was Trinity's new shopping centre being built. Plans for the other end are Hammerson's Victoria Gate. So this kind of very potent symbol of a high street at a time of change, technology affecting how we're shopping, was something that we thought symbolically meant quite a lot to get hold of, so we worked very hard to get hold of it. We did an event which was about how do you place play in the heart of the commercial district of an area. So it is about shopping, obviously. That's what Leeds' dominant narrative has been. But what would it take to say play is equally important to this city? You don't have to spend money. So the next slide. These are just some of the images I've picked out. You've probably all got completely different pictures in your head when you think of what the narrative is that we talk about when we think of Leeds. I've been quite naughty, really, by putting the brick man in there, because it's the kind of ghost that won't go away. We failed as a city to do something that equaled the Angel of the North, and we never forget about it. So I'm sorry that I'm bringing it up again. The reason why I put stickle brick in there is because stickle brick was actually invented in Leeds by a guy called Dennis Fisher. So you can see where this connection in my head's going, which is why don't we make the stickle brick man, woman, family. And anyway, so that's just an idea. So really, this is how people think of Leeds: shopping, football, retail. But there's a technology story as well, which doesn't really come out very much, which is about mass manufacture, ready-made clothing, the textiles trade. That's not the story we're telling. And I think we need to start as a city telling different stories and accepting that there are many stories that we can all tell and have confidence to go about them. Next slide. So this is a lot of text, isn't it, really? So usually I'm asking questions. I don't normally have the answers. But after that event that we did at what was Borders, we had about 150 people coming up with ideas of what they'd like to do if they could really, really do something creative in the city. One of the ideas that seemed to sort of catch hold was the idea of robots. And an idea of sort of like a robot parade at that stage. It kind of took hold in my mind because I was making robots with the kids, and Danny, who I've showed already, he couldn't even speak, but he could walk like a robot, and he could make robot movements. So there was something around it would be engaging for young men. It's a thing that we do in the arts and cultural sector. We're not very good at engaging teenagers. So we started thinking, based on the question of what could bring the widest population of all ages together in an explosion. I mean, I like that word, but explosion of civic pride. So looking back to things like the Lord Mayor's Parade, which we don't do anymore, which, what you think about that, I don't know. But the idea that at a point in time, the whole community would come together in creativity and you'd get a sense of the bigger picture of Leeds. So we're absolutely fantastic at doing things in our own communities, but unless we kind of take a bus route or drive, we'll never know what goes on the other side of town. So the idea of something that actually we could say is a conversation starter. How do we make something? And I don't know if any of you have been to Valencia. Show of hands here. If any of you come across Las Fallas, it's an amazing city festival of fireworks where communities come together to make these great big effigies. They could be satirical or, fanciful or Disney-like. And after a week of festivities, they set fire to them. So that's ultimately what we want to do to Leeds, but I don't think I'm going to get there just yet. So this is my idea of how do we create a kind of Las Fallas in Leeds with robots. So next slide. So robots, we've been making cardboard robots. That's what you got roped into tonight. We've done a few events. They were our stealth events. And through this, we're not just going to do cardboard. We want to look at technology. We want to look at the Internet of Things. We want to get coding going. We want to, explore robotics in its absolute widest sense. We want to look at ourselves as a human being, as a human race at a time of exponential change, and how we feel as a society moving forward at a time that actually, I think quite a lot of us feel our jobs are at risk and we don't know where we're going. So robots can be both good and bad in this narrative. And we decided to call it March the Robots. So it's been pootling along quite nicely until the next slide. I don't know if you've seen Leeds Town Hall. This is exactly what it looks like. This is that 1950s robot Saigon. So about 4 weeks ago, I saw this thing online saying, Saigon, 1950s, 9-foot tall, robot, created in Italy, came to the UK in the 1950s, was up for auction, and the guide price was between 8 and 12k. And I thought, wow, okay, this quiet little start of March the Robots, why don't we actually just kibosh that entirely and go massively public and see if we can raise the funds, because I don't have the funds for this, to bring this very, very kitsch robot to town. But why? Why this robot? Well, obviously, he'd been in Leeds, but that wasn't really the story. The story was about the fact that it could bring intergenerational activity together. We could bring it back to life. It used to move. It used to listen to voice commands. And it would allow us to actually explore, I think, through this creative way, what is a conversation starter. That's what it was. I didn't really expect in 2 weeks to raise £15,000, which was the target. But we thought, why not? Let's have a go. So over bank holiday, there's 2 weeks where we couldn't get hold of people. I'm not making excuses. I'm still really, really blown away that within 2 weeks, we raised £7,000. And some of you may have pledged, so I have to say thank you very much for that. We had people pledging their children's ice cream money. We were on Look North, we're in all the newspapers. People either loved it or hated it. It didn't really matter. It was the fact that we were starting to talk about this festival with zero budget, basically. So the next slide shows the kind of two stories that come out of this. You get the BBC reporting it as a loss. We lost it. We lost the robot. And the Yorkshire Post, looking at the relationship that we created with the university through this activity as a potentially really interesting story that Leeds can start to tell to itself, to the rest of the world, which is actually there's some amazing robotics that go on in this city. It's the third city for manufacturing, another fact that we probably don't know. And the university are about to open a centre for robotics, £4 million investment into it. And that's going to happen in October, which is when March of the Robots will lead up to this great culminating event. So we've already developed partnerships which are meaningful. They got exposure through the campaign with Saigon to their rehabilitation robotics, which they would never have got if we hadn't have had this conversation with them and they got on board. So we're just starting, but the conversation starter for Saigon has brought into, we've had phone calls with IBM, with Farnell, who make Raspberry Pi. So we've got technology partners interested, we've got engineers, we've got people who, 120 pledges within 2 weeks is amazing. So we kind of feel that that's a bit of an answer. It may not be the thing for everybody, and I think I might turn into a robot, which slightly alarms me. But we're hoping that it is a launch of what we're going to do, which is March the Robots, that some of you might be interested in talking to us after and saying, I've got a bit of time, I've got a bit of skill, I love money. Money would be really good. But, how do we play with our city? And let's hope that this stimulates your interest. Either that or I'm probably going to see you cross into the other side of the road very quickly. So thanks for having me. And let me know afterwards if there's anything you want to get involved with. Thank you.